Right now I'm a service designer at the Department of International Trade. So basically I help government creating services that meet user needs, and specifically at this department I'm working on a discovery for a project around events, so trade show exhibitions where the department is involved to help UK businesses export overseas.
Okay.
Yeah, so as a service designer, I would say I'm a little bit like on a higher level than UX design, in the sense that I'm more focused on the actors, applications, processes, channels, and different transactions that happen throughout the service. And my role is to kind of understand how this can be put together in a way that is easy to understand for the end user. At the same time, I co-founded this agency called 360, which is focused on VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, and basically the mission of this project is to help companies and businesses create products and services for VR that are based on user needs, so to promote and facilitate a user-centered approach to VR design in general. I did a master's degree in Rome in media studies, and then I moved to Malmö to study interaction design. So I spent a year there. How did I get into design? When I was doing the uni in Rome, I started it because I wanted to be a journalist. So I was very passionate about, telling stories, writing. I really wanted to pursue that career, and so that's why I joined that course. And while being there, we realized with other friends of mine that even though it was a journal, like a degree in journalism, there was no lab to actually experiment and try out things. There was no newspaper to write. Just you wanna. And so we decided to create one ourselves. The goal was giving people the opportunity to write. So we put together this project. It was like a weekly magazine where other students could write, share, and test different styles of writing. But at one point, while we were doing it, we found out that someone had to put it together, like the layout and all that kind of stuff. And at the time, I didn't know anything. I didn't have any technical skill. I was very passionate about computer, but more on gaming than anything. And so I learned at that point. I got very interested into print design, visual design. I learned a few tools: Photoshop, Quark, Express, and then from there, that was the beginning. I realized that I really liked design.
Nice. So then, after the school, you finished your university degree in Malmö, and then you started. Can you describe your first job after university?
Yeah. So when I finished in Malmö, I made the decision that probably I probably would do differently, which was going back to Italy. I was like, okay, I'm done here. So now I'm gonna go back to Italy and kind of, export the knowledge there. And so I went back to Rome, and my first job was in a marketing agency. So I was basically doing flash banners, advertisement, digital things for things like movies or for like any like phone companies. I was in charge of creating the storyboard with the creative idea to convey a certain message, and then create those like banners in Flash that had to was very strict guidelines and requirements about the size, about the format, so it was quite challenging at times, because talking about 2006. So even though the broadband and the size of it was very, but at the same time it was really interesting, because first job as a designer, collaborating with other people, understanding different roles and how design is not just your thing, but it's a shared outcome, if you want, and the idea of the creative process and the storyboarding. That's where I basically learned hands-on how to do it, working with a copywriter. So it was more very much design as more like towards the advertisement, which initially was okay, and then I realized that it wasn't really what I wanted to do.
Okay. And then I guess there were another jobs related to design. Can you tell me when exactly you moved to London and why? What was the reason?
Yeah, so I moved to London twice. The first time, after a few things, I had a full-time job at one point as an interaction designer for a company part of Expedia. So it was a travel accommodations, and but then at one point iPhone came out on the market. Got really excited about it and decided to leave my full-time job to start my own company with another person. So we started this agency focused on apps. We basically were doing the design and development of mobile apps for clients. And so at one point I decided to move here to just get a little bit different type of environment and new connections, because Rome wasn't very lively in terms of opportunities in the field. So I moved here. First time didn't work out because I was like working here in a weird setup. I had clients in Rome, so I didn't really manage to get into the network, into living in London. I was living in London, but I was actually working for Rome. So it was to cut the story short, I went back there and then I came back a few years ago when we actually moved the company here. And so the reason was basically mainly business and opportunities to grow as a person and as a company.
Okay, yeah, understand. And after that, I guess you did some freelance, if I remember well, freelance jobs. Also, you work for Sky, am I right?
Yeah.
Can you describe just shortly what was your position there?
I was a UX designer. That was my first contract job, because up to that point I was doing, I'd been doing either full-time or my own thing. And I was working on Sky Store, which was basically a platform where Sky is selling the same products that you get with the subscription, but on a pay-as-you-go basis. So you can buy movies, I just want to buy this movie, I don't want to have a subscription with Sky. So you could do that, and it was web, mobile, and smart TVs.
Mm-hmm. So completely different platforms.
Yeah, completely different platforms. We were, there was they have a UX and UI designers, so they are separate, and I think there was three and three, so it was a fairly big team, really good people, really talented people, stayed there for 6 months.
So now you started with VR. Do you see it as an opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. I think every one of us has to kind of understand what they want from life and where they want to be. So for me, it's really about one is being on the frontier of technology. I get really excited about discovering new ways of interacting, new ways of understanding the world, new ways of learning, new ways of, if you want, by experiencing things. So VR and AR in that sense are tools that have an enormous potential, and they can probably take us very far in terms of the way we, even if you are in terms of human progress, I can see that happening. But at the same time, I see the risk of this process taking way longer than necessary, as it's happened for mobile and web. You get these waves of new technologies, and usually it's the technology leads the scene, and the people and the interaction and the usability, if you want, the UX of that, it falls behind. And it's only when the technology has exhausted all the possible solutions that the designers come in and like, okay, let's fix this. So you want to learn from the past. And I think same thing could happen for VR. That is, right now there's a lot of technology, a lot of super cool stuff, especially because it's a lot of stuff. It's in gaming, but I started this with the intent of looking a little bit forward and say, okay, VR is super cool, but how can we use it as a tool to understand better the world, beside the hype of the technology? And so I started it with Philip. He's worked with me for a few years now. He's a researcher, so it's really the focus of 360 is really on user research and on delivering this type of insight. So how you as a company working on a product can deliver something that people can use. If you want, is like how can you apply user-centered design to VR? How do you do it? What are the new interactions? What are how people are supposed to interact with your product? And given that there's not really a standard right now, it's still in development. I think that for a designer is really exciting in a way, because it's the time where you can experiment and share and define with other people, and you can really see the patterns, the standards emerge from this, and probably in 5 years you're gonna have some kind of some types of interaction that are more established. Well, right now it's really up for grabs. If you things like how do you move in VR, or do you teleport, or do you slide, or do you all this type of stuff.
Interactions within the VR world, let's say.
Yes. And how do you interact with an object? What are the best ways of doing it?
Interesting. Aren't you scared about this thing that maybe VR as a technology is too expensive? Also, that because mobile phone, everyone has mobile phone. Mobile is quite easy to use, easy to carry.
Yeah.
But VR is quite different for me. Like in terms of experience, you have to have some specific device. At this moment, you have to also have like really powerful computer connected into this VR headset.
Yeah.
don't you feel that this could be limiting a little bit in terms of like that everyone could be able to use VR technology?
Yeah, well, definitely there are some challenges around the accessibility of VR. About the price, it's going to go down. A lot of players are coming into the market. Microsoft, Lenovo, they bringing prices down a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if in like 2-3 years the headset are way more accessible in terms of price. Right now it's all about gamers, so they more likely to spend a bit more to enjoy the experience, but it's probably going to be more accessible in terms of price. Having said so, I think that there's two things, right? There's VR, virtual reality, so an experience that if you want is like quite intimate and internal. You're like isolated from the rest of the world, and I think that has some potential in certain areas, which are the ones. So the big potential of VR is like if you want to transcend the physicality of the world. So you could create a reality that is not, this one doesn't obey to the same rules. Mm-hmm. At the same time, and I think they go together, there's augmented reality, which is, about adding information to the physical world that we see here. So it's not about being somewhere else. It's about being here, but in a more enhanced way. So I can look at you, for example, and I can see some information about, your LinkedIn profile or additional things that could help me. AI, if you want, is it's way more transparent, and transparency is the ultimate goal that I think we want to achieve with this technology, because the more transparent the interface is in any channel, any type of interaction, the more connected you feel with the content. Because ultimately, I'm using my phone to get access to data to do something. Like I want to buy something on Amazon, or I want to call a friend, and the phone itself really is always a sort of it's ultimately a barrier, because it's something in between me and my goal. So if we manage to reduce this interface in a way that I don't mean removing it, I mean reducing the interruption between me and the goal, then we can have something that is quite invisible. Mm-hmm. And for example, you can think of a scenario where we don't have the phone anymore because the information is all right there in front of you when you need it.
You mean in this moment you're talking about something like Google Glasses, or something like that you have like argued reality just in time whenever you are, because at this moment I'm not sure if we are talking about VR or AR.
Yeah, I guess the two things go together. They might converge at one point, where I think there's learnings from VR that can be applied to AR and vice versa. But the principle of, if you want, invisibility, it's like for VR, you don't want to have this headset with like a cable, and you can like trip on it, and then you feel like you're totally. It totally breaks the sense of presence, which is
exactly. So this is another barrier, maybe. Bigger than the phone.
Bigger. Yeah, for VR right now, there's a lot about wireless headsets. Where is it going in that sense? And I see when people try VR for the first time, you just need to be there and really control them. Because unless you're really aware of all you read about it, and it can be a bit, the first time you tried it, it's quite intense as an experience. And so you need to change your living room, move everything. This cable, you need to be very careful because you can like trip and fall, and so all this sort of stuff is just because right now it's like VR is a baby, right? And technology will progress and things will get lighter, smaller, and more transparent. And so in VR and AR, we'll be able to get what we want without having to worry about all these other things.
Understand. So, if you think about the future, what would you see as a usable VR, IR headset or tool? How can you like, if there are no limitations, we are in the future, how would you like describe this tool, how it should look?
I mean, in a way you'd want not to see it, but like it could be, something that you have with you, and you don't, it's like pretty much invisible. So I think that the Google Glass thing, it's interesting because you can make it invisible if you're using something that you have already. So like glasses, it's something that most people, well, some people have, and so you can turn that into something more intelligent. But yeah, I don't know, like future is out there, and I guess I see it as one day we'll just do something that is natural, but the same way is enhanced by the data. So ideally, it will feel natural to go into VR. But at the same time, it will have so much more than now.
How do you keep your designing skills, up to date?
Well, I have few people that I really like. They're not like, some of them are not strictly designers, because I think in the end I really like to cultivate the way of thinking. So, for example, obviously Steve Jobs is one of them, mainly because the clarity and the way he was able to convey his vision about things, and also the way he was able to hide a lot of crap, hide a lot of complexity. And definitely another one which is more contemporary is Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, incredible man, incredibly inspiring for anyone, I think. And again, it's about like things like how do you approach a problem? Because design is about solving problems. So how do you approach a problem? Things like thinking in terms of first principles, which is something that it really advocates for, which is basically, when you approach a problem, just get all the assumptions out of the way, go to the very, very basic components of your problem, and then build from the bottom from that point, so that you can make sure that anything that you create doesn't have false assumptions. And then another point of reference for me is I started working in public sector 2 years and a half ago, and definitely GDS, the Government Digital Service, they are probably one of the things that I look up more in terms of there's so many talented designers in the community, and it's quite special because coming from another country where public sector is regarded a little bit as like like leading in terms of innovation, finding this like sort of a gem was really refreshing, and so being part of this community is really exciting because you get a lot of people really trying to do the right thing, build the right thing for the end users, fighting battles every day with sort of like policies or stakeholders that are not really that are a little bit hard to handle. Yeah, so that's definitely something I like to be involved in.
Nice. Back to your motivation, like what motivates you to be better in design?
So I guess the first thing is I always try to deliver something that is based on user needs. So it's really motivation that creates a lot of motivation because you're trying to create something that goes to the public, and it's meant to help people, help them with their business, with their lives, with their all sort of problems that they might have depending on what you're working on. So you're in a position where you have a responsibility of delivering something that works. And not just works, it works in a way, it works for them. I think that's quite fascinating, and I feel privileged, in a sense, to be to have the opportunity to work on such things.
As you are designing, you follow some principles, like general principles of design, as all of us do. How do you enhance these skills?
So I guess again the community is very important. If you work for government, you have different channels you can use to share the things that you're doing. So we have Slack, email. Obviously, you have there's like meetups with different departments where you can go and present what you're doing. So that with different goals. One is you can learn what other people are doing. So if you're working, say, on a payment process, you might find out that someone else in another part of government is working on that bit, and you can share and maybe not duplicate things. At the same time, I guess working with the in research, doing a lot of research helps you to understand and refine and get feedback on what you're doing. So I guess establishing a feedback loop is essential. I don't think there can be any, especially UX design, without research, right? So if you say that you're a UX designer and you don't do any research, or you're not involved in research, you're not a designer. Like, you're just doing things. Because design is not about what you think is right, it's about what works, right? So if you don't get the feedback from the users, you're never gonna know. And so you have these principles that are a valuable starting point. But again, it all depends on what you're doing, who are you doing for, what's your context. So until you put that in front of people and people try it out, you're never gonna improve.
It's interesting that in government they are like up to date with new modern technologies and new approaches in terms of design. Yeah. Can you just describe how it works there more closely?
Sure. I think one thing that was really surprising for me, and when I started, is the how a project goes from discovery, so the initial research phase, into live. So when you start creating a new service, you start from usually nothing. So you do your research, you build up your prototypes, test your prototypes, and then at one point you're like, okay, we're ready to start creating some code, go into beta and so forth. Every time you go from one of these big phases, so from alpha to beta to live, you can just decide yourself. There's an assessment, which is basically you go and present your work to a panel.
And this panel is like, who are the people within the panel?
So people are, they cover all the disciplines. So there's like designers.
So all are from government services?
Yes. Yeah. So they can be either from GDS, which is the cabinet office, or other departments. So you could have a panel where you have a researcher from home office and a designer from HMRC and so forth. They give the availability for these assessments, and they are called. So they basically, you present what you've done, the research that you've done, how you approached the project, people that you interviewed, prototypes. The whole team goes, the whole service team. So the developer in your team is going to present the technical bit, and at the end they basically assess your service against what are the design principles, the service manual principles in government. So there are principles around design for user needs, design with data. Have a service that is iterative, so they can learn from feedback. So all these standards are assessed one by one, and at the end you get either an okay to go live or a fail. If you get a fail, it means you need to go back into the previous stage and basically follow some of the recommendations that they have. So this is really interesting because if you happen to be on a team that, because of various dynamics, is not really into user-centric design, you're not going to go live ever, because you're not going to be able to present something that was built on user needs. So basically you never be able to have a service live that is not being tested and researched and designed with proper with the end users. And there I think for a designer it's really valuable, because it's just an extra
so it's kind of like validation of your work. Basically, if you did it well in terms of research, usability testing in your small team, and then you go to these assessments, it's again only the validation by the similar group of your users in terms of personas, and so they are basically validating the product.
Exactly. It's probably one of the reasons why I joined I studied at HMRC on a payment service for taxes, and knowing all this, the GDS and the assessment process, the design standards, it was just so refreshing, because you don't really find it in the private sector either. Like we test what we do when we are in from alpha onwards. Every 2 weeks you get to see say up to five businesses, if you're working on businesses or citizens, whatever. And so you get constant feedback. Every 2 weeks you put something in front of people, get feedback, iterate all the time. And that's critical to build a service that is based on user needs.
Wow, that's really good. I like it, because at the end, really, like all of the people here in UK will use it basically.
Yeah.
So they have to understand it, and it has to be usable without any complications.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I think we covered all the questions I want to ask you. So thank you very much for participating in this project. It was very nice to talk to you.
Thank you.